This week we saw a new three-tier system brought in to try and curb the new increases for the coronavirus. And this is what I think it could mean for the property market. Hey, what's up guys, Dan Dravidi here. I hope you're all well. As ever, do me a huge favour and smash the like button, and don't forget to hit subscribe and the little bell icon next to it. So we have seen a new three-tier system, which basically means the higher the tier, the tighter the restrictions on social distancing and movement and interaction and businesses closing gets. And I've been speaking to some really good friends of mine who are estate agents or owner of estate agents, and I thought I would do a video specifically on this topic. What do we know? We know that the three tiers are, even at the very highest level, not as strict as the lockdown that we had back in March. But even still, if you're in these tier three, which isn't a huge amount of the population at the moment, it's mainly the Manchester, Liverpool areas, but we do know that things like pubs are going to close, and the social distancing measures are pretty much similar to the lockdown that we had, albeit you can still go to restaurants within your own household. Now, really, those measures shouldn't be affecting the property market, because even though they are stricter, they are short-term bursts of measures to try and curb and restrict the increase in this RA, which is the amount of people or one person will affect if they've got the virus. So we shouldn't really, in essence, if you look back at what's been happening at the coronavirus and all the different measures that have been brought in place, the biggest dip in the market has been and gone already. And all of the different changes, we've actually seen quite a steady mini boom within the property market. However, even though these measures aren't as harsh or aren't as restrictive, there definitely has been a shift from buyers in the property market. It's definitely starting to slow down. I think there is some confidence within the overall market that actually we weren't just in this pandemic, in this lockdown, and then we were coming out of it in August and things were kind of getting back to normal. And things like the stamp duty holiday, and then the confidence driven by government and things like the Chancellor bringing in help out to eat out, that just helped this mini boom, because people were like, look, we're kind of out of the worst of it. It wasn't as bad as everyone thought. Let's get going. But this second spike and this second set of measures and the unpredictability of when the measures can come, when the spikes can hit in certain areas and certain geographical locations has, I think, definitely put it's unsettled what was a pretty much booming market within this short burst. And I kind of have started to see it within the market, but agents who are sort of in the thick of it, they're in the trenches with the buyers and the sellers, have all started to say to me, look, Dan, no one's going to talk their own market down, but we have definitely started to see over the last 10 days to 2 weeks a slowdown coming from the buyers, an uneasement in their attitude towards the properties that are on the market. And this can be driven by some data that you can just easily check yourself online. If you go on something like Rightmove and you check to see how many prices have been reduced over the last 2 weeks, you'll actually see a huge amount of the properties that have been listed since August have been reduced. Now, you could argue that they were listed at an overpriced value because the mini boom was happening. That's kind of what you do in a booming market. You overprice it, people start fighting for the same property, and that's how you increase prices really quickly in a boom. And that booming attitudes from buyers has slowed down, which means that these overpriced properties are being reduced. So can I sort of say, is that a true measure of what is happening within the market? And only time will really tell, but I do think it's starting to slow down. Now, I've got an auction next week. Now, you all know that I'm a huge fan of auctions. I've actually bought or underwrote a property at every single auction this year. And next week is no different. I'm actually underwriting 2 properties. And I think a real test of what is happening from a buyer's side will be at auction, because we've seen some properties which are overpriced, not a great investment, but 2 retail investors or 2 home owner occupiers get involved in the bidding and overbid and overpay for these properties. And we've seen it over the last 3 auctions. So there is a few properties that I wasn't that I wasn't even considering buying at or even looking at. But I'm going to start to just look at those as they go through, just to see how much interest and how much bidding is on those properties. And that'll give me a pretty good indication. You can't judge the market, what's going on, by one auction. But what you can do is you can literally take all of the facts and all of the feelings that's going on within your local market and become an expert of reading between the lines. One of the biggest reasons I've been so successful in such a short space of time is because I've been really good at always reading between the lines and trying to understand the different patterns and how they can affect a long-term and short-term market. And that's how you can judge what's going to be a good deal and what's not going to be a great deal. Takes time, takes a lot of practice, takes getting it wrong a lot of times, but you will eventually get there. So next week's going to be really interesting at the auction. I'm underwriting 2 properties. I actually would have done 3 or 4. And at the start, when the properties were listed to start with, I would have took 3 or 4 on. However, I'm seeing a bit of a shift. And if a shift comes and attitude from buyers drop, then it becomes effectively back to being a buyer's market like it did in March and April. And that is when I picked up some great deals. And all the trolls and all the haters who keep commenting, because I'll just keep proving you completely wrong with the deals that I'll buy. And if we do see a drop in buyers, then expect the attitude from sellers to change. And the ones who do need to sell, who are sitting literally on a deck of cards waiting to fall, is where you can maybe step in and pick up a good deal. Don't know, I'll do a video next week after that auction, and that will give us more of an insight. But the tier 3 system, I mean, we're in tier 1. A lot of the places around me are in tier 2. Tier 1 to tier 2, there isn't a huge amount of difference. Really, the tier 1, the 2-tier thing isn't a huge impact on paper on businesses. But what it has done is it changes the attitude, it changes the confidence within consumers. And literally, since these tiers were announced, I've seen a change in the consumer part of the market, the retail market within Norwich city centre. And you can see that there's less people out, there's less people spending money. And even though pubs and other businesses don't have to close, some are making the decision to close because they think that's the right thing for them. I personally don't think that you should ever close your business until you're made to. You should always try to adapt to the sets of circumstances that are presented to in front of you. If all pubs had to close their doors because they couldn't serve alcohol inside, there is always going to be a market and a demand for a takeaway business or a garden-led sort of business. And if your product can't be sold for whatever reason, then you shift with the times and you give the consumer what they want. For example, if they don't want beer, then they'll want coffee, and do takeaway coffees, all these various things. So try not to shut your business if you can. I understand everyone's circumstances are completely different, and you've got huge overhead costs with staff being on premises, and when you're not taking any money, that's a huge bill that you have to pick up yourself. But if you can remain open, you can only build a business and grow a business whilst those doors are open. You can't really do it behind closed doors unless you shift with takeaways and things like that. Anyway, a little bit off property, but keep an eye on the consumer demand and how busy the high streets are, how busy these pubs and restaurants are, because that also gives you another measure, another form of data, something else to read between the lines to get an overall sense of what's happening within the market. But we do need to keep our eye on this, because we could now just see another short slump, which means getting the good deals will be the right time for you and me to step in and buy those deals. But that's it from me, really quick video. Hope you have a great weekend, and I'll catch you all in the next video.